That one you posted, was it yesterday,
Yeah.
about the Apollo 11 takeoff film? That was a very interesting film because it shows that there's been editing or unacknowledged editing of the official films, and they said they weren't edited.
Scott and I went over it. We put it in the editor, right? We counted the frames. Okay, yeah, 1/24th. And it was constant packets, which means that they didn't add any variable frames in there. So it was a constant frame rate. We were just dropping and counting packets. And then Raza said something about there's something strange at the end where stuff starts flying off of it. It starts coming like it's almost like pieces are falling off of the lens. So I was going back and forth there, and then I was going counting packets, and all of a sudden there's 11, no, 13 frames missing.
Really?
And you could see it. It was going do 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 do, and all of a sudden like this, right? And then Scott go, "Oh, wait a minute." And he says, "Did you notice those craters? They're missing." Then I'm looking over on the right hand side, and all of a sudden the crater that's round stretches. Like it
Ah,
just goes bloop like this, and we're going, okay, well, that's coming off of a set. Now, I think what happened was, Liz, seriously, they had LRO film of the moon as it was going around. Well, when they send it back to Earth, after scanned and digitally transmitted, and then they stick it on a Scotch light screen, they blend it right in. So there's your blend mark right there. All of a sudden, the scene changes.
I think that's a key discovery, actually, because it's never been mentioned before, certainly for Apollo 11. People have
No,
said things, similar things about other Apollos, but not Apollo 11, which
no.
indicates that they were doing some faking of the official film, which is where you probably get Lookout Mountain coming in, adding in those extra bits.
They must have had those plaster molds there. I mean, that stuff looked like it's hanging right up against those plaster molds.
Oh, that piece
Yeah.
that fell off. How long did it take to hit the screen?
Maybe 3 or 4 seconds. There's a piece that falls off the thing when it's so called flying, and you
Yeah.
can see it go all the way down and hit the lunar surface.
Yeah.
Now, how can
Wow.
you see a small particle, see it hit? And the way it's moving, the angle of it, it's actually accelerating past. It's going faster than the vehicle is when it hits the lunar surface.
Yeah.
But if you're 60 miles up, how are you going to see something that's a couple inches across?
You're
Well,
not.
it looked like it went into a crater, right? Then we're
Yeah.
looking and no, and then go, no, no, wait, it's continuing, it's continuing.
Of course, my point has always been if you're 60 miles up from the surface of the earth, how come it's so bloody smooth when the mountains on the earth are higher than the moon? And
Yeah.
this thing is as rough as hell.
And
I
don't
mean,
forget that Armstrong said he had to avoid the boulder field.
where is that in any of their
Like,
shots?
where is the boulder field? I've never seen any picture of it.
Not even on the takeoff. When it expands out, he only had about 30 seconds of fuel left after when he was doing that hovering. So it has to be very close by.
Well, of course it does. Yeah. I mean, he was hovering above the surface. He'd moved across the boulder field. There's no boulder field there I've ever seen.
No, none in the panoramic views or anything else.
So that's a fake piece of information, which allowed Armstrong to put down in a place that Collins couldn't find him because Collins said he could never see them.
When you look at the Apollo 11 photographs, off in the distance, there's a couple of large rocks, and that's
That's
it. But it's not a boulder field.
no. A boulder field would be, especially from high up, you'll be able to see it, especially with the sun at quite a low angle. You'll be able to see it, and the shadows would be much longer than the boulders would be high. So it'd be very obvious. But there isn't anything there. I've never seen anything which would be
No,
considered to be a boulder field.
no, it was written in the script, but it wasn't on the plaster mold.
It wasn't
Well,
on the
here's the
set
other
either.
No,
here's the other thing that's interesting too is that this is the first time you're going to see the thrusters actually fire. When you put this against the CSM, well, the funny thing is when the LEM is turning, you don't see the thrusters fire, and yet from the window you could see them fire.
But surely you'd also hear them because Collins is in an atmosphere in the command module. That's got an atmosphere in there. If the
yes, and they're attached to the vehicle itself,
Yeah,
so the vibration is going to go through the aluminum.
yeah, of course it is.
All right, so here we are here. you're going to see most of the debris comes right from here. We're going to go really slow. Now you're going to see some stuff floating by like here. Watch this. You see this, Marcus? You see that particle here?
Yeah, I see that. Yeah,
All right, I'm going to just drag it along slowly. And it's right there.
yeah, yeah. I can see it there. Yeah,
Okay, now I'll keep going and then I'll highlight it again. All right, there it is there. That
yeah.
little
Got
white dot. Okay, now I'm going to slow it down even more now. Now it's going. It's right there. So there it is there. There it is there. There it is there. And then it's going behind this shadow.
Yep.
And it's gone.
Yep.
So it's this crater right here it's going into.
Yep.
It's hitting right here. It's striking this and then it's gone. You can actually still see it. It's fading out into this crater.
Yep.
Okay.
So in 18 seconds, it went 60 miles.
well. That's assuming because you see the problem we've got here is that was this actually filmed on the lunar surface, or is it a fake piece of film trying to appear like the lunar surface? Is it one of the Lunar Orbiter photographs?
They claim
No,
it is, but this is just a camera and a piece of fluff that fell off onto the plaster mold.
I still think that these are those panels that they're setting up.
It
It could
could,
be.
yeah, it could be, but it's showing one of the Lunar Orbiter photographs.
that's what I think it is. Exactly. A lunar orbiter film.
If they didn't get to the lunar surface to create the photograph, then the whole thing was faked from the orbiter photographs using a plaster mold. So what is that thing that's coming out if it's a plaster mold?
Then you get to this. Now watch this where they make the cut.
Let's see.
He's just going back and forth on it there. See the jump? And there's 13 frames missing there in between those two.
So there's 13 frames missing in this packet. 13 frames have been chopped right out between here and here. See?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And look at this crater stretches.
yeah, completely different. The shadow's different. It's the change between the plaster model and the photographs from which the plaster model was taken. But why would there be 13 frames missing?
Well, they edited the film and then continued on
And then
with
when you
another
look at-
camera.
So when you're looking at these three here, watch what happens to these ones, to this pack here. Huh?
Yeah, they
They
all
just-
blur right out there.
They're gone.
They vanished.
It's like there they are down here, but they're all stretched.
Yeah, and the ones just to the left of them are the same way too.
And then this one comes out of nowhere because there's only three there. So they all move down here. And then these two come out of nowhere. These two.
Yeah.
They don't exist. Where are they?
Yeah, where are they?
They were right here. Now there's two craters. Like, huh?
In 1/24th of a second, the sun jumped a few million miles, so the shadow angles changed.
They were very clever with their creation of the film. They very nearly got it right.
I
But
don't think they were trying that hard because who in their right mind would even possibly think that in 2025 that we can examine 1/24th of a second on film?
Good point.
Most of this film was done so poorly that they put up on the journal site, right? All of these little videos are so tiny to start with, and now they're a few higher resolutions for people, and now we can see it. But they don't even know
Yeah.
because all those people are dead that did that. The people that are putting it up today have no idea that the errors are in there.
It's the transition between the original films, which were frames per second. Well, that's how film was made. They hadn't got digital films at that point. They had films, and they fiddle around with the films. They cut frames out and they change them. But there's a difference between being able to examine the film as you've done here and how it was originally created by just splicing bits of film together.
Here's a shot from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter 1966. Beside it, there's an aerial photograph of exactly the same landscape that they blew into the Arizona landscape. Now, if you were to superimpose one of these images over the other, which I'm going to do, and then we're going to blend them in and out.
There's quite a difference between them. So that left-hand picture, the aerial photograph, that's Flagstaff.
Yes.
Okay. And they copied that from the orbiter photograph.
Or the claimed orbiter photograph. They could have done that on a plaster mold as well, or taken it from a high resolution telescope.
Okay, there we are. Now we're matched. And then we're going to do some fade ins and we're going to do some fade outs. There's your aerial, and then there's your orbiter.
Yeah, so there's more in what they did at Flagstaff. They put more down.
But you can kind of get the idea of how they're doing this. And you're making blends, like let's say these two craters down here, and you start fading those out. Of course, there's still some that are going to be missing, but I get your point. I think that's about the closest we're going to get is about
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So they were using both of those images, weren't they? At different points in the takeoff scene.
Yeah, I think you're right. So what they did was they had it set up for real somewhere in Flagstaff. That's what I believe happened. And
Yeah.
I think it was real. I think they really had a big setup there. I don't think this was just a model.
If they went off of the surface at Flagstaff, they could use the gantry crane and yank a camera up.
Yeah, but you have to get the window the same, the inside of the window.
Well, you're lifting the actual lem up.
Yes, and then you're blending the aerial photography in with it.
That'll get you 200 feet, and then you can just start to zoom out with it as well.
I mean, if you go like this, for example, and you want to make a quick change, like we see here, and you take 11 frames out, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, now you're going to get this.
Yeah. I think that's what happened.
But
It
it's
was,
going to be instant. It's going to be wham like that. It's just
yeah.
going to be like this. And then all of a sudden, now you get these craters that are not formed properly or ill shaped.
Yeah, well,
And,
you
it,
see, that would explain the rocking as well if it's being lifted on a cable.
and it'd be much harder to spot the change. If you take half a second out, you wouldn't see the change gradually. You'd see it very fast. Most people
When,
have missed that, but
yeah.
you've spotted it.
And then when they get over and transition into orbit and the lunar terrain gets a lot rougher,
Yeah.
those are much larger, rougher craters. I think they're doing that against the plaster mold.
But I don't think so because the plaster mold they're using is only a quarter of a circular moon. This is rotating all the way around like this.
I know, but they also had the 20-foot sphere of the moon, right?
We've never seen a completed photo of that model. Not once. Not a completed one. I get it. We see the camera going through the tracks, but that moon is only a quarter of the moon. It's not the full size moon.
Yeah.
And when they show the Lola simulator, they don't have the mapping on it yet. It's not there yet.
Yeah, but did you see how many of those panels they had piled up there? Those with the quarter curves on them?
Yeah, and by the way, those were outside. Do you think I could find that image? Remember, they are assembling them outside, not in a studio, but outside in the daylight.
Well, maybe they were grinding and sanding the plaster molds and a whole lot of dust, so they took them outside
No,
to create the
no,
craters.
no. They were setting them up. There were two images showing them setting them up outside. Where did those images go? Because I can't find them. We have them, but they're in videos that are 8 years old.
Is Archangel's website still up?
Well, you can't Google it. Google Archangel, you never find it because he's so shadow blocked, just like us. You never find those images anymore. As a matter of fact, try it now, Marcus. For images of Lola Simulator, you will see every one of them there, but you will not see the ones that they are setting up outside. They even show the ground they're standing on. Because you see, some of those guys say, well, it can't be in a studio, it has to be outside. And others say, well, no, it was inside of a studio, can't be. And if I could find those images, but you're not going to find them because they have literally vanished from the internet. And I think this, Scott, is more what you were talking about when that camera is going down that track and you have two versions of the moon. Well, I think one's concave and one's convex.
I just accidentally came across Archangel on Daily Motion, and there's probably, I don't know, it doesn't say how many videos are here, probably 80.
But the whole point of this is that those images that are on that screen that you're seeing, those were taken from the LRO.
I don't believe there was ever an LRO there. That's my problem. Not in the 1960s.
Well, look at all the simulators that they had here.
Given the time frame that they had, how short a time? Why would you waste your time building all of this stuff if you aren't going to use it? Why would you spend all of that time at Flagstaff blowing holes in the ground? What for? So you can take pictures of it and call it the moon. That's why.
You just can't have craters changing shape with 13 missing frames.
No, that can't happen. If it happened by accident on an editing floor where somebody messed up the film and they had to cut a piece out.
There is no other place in that film where there's frames missing like that. That's the only place. We looked at 24 frame packets, 24 frame packets. We made sure that every frame was different and that they weren't duplicating the frames like in a variable frame rate. Not this time. Why in that entire sequence are 13 frames missing? And why is that crater stretched and those other craters just vanish? That's where they composited the two together. They've basically faded one into the other is what they did, except because there's 13 frames missing, it goes like that and you don't see it. But usually in Hollywood, they would use that shadow that Marcus was mentioning. That's where they would have done that cut.
And if it was done fast enough, you wouldn't see it change.
If you took 13 frames out of there, that would be a good way of hiding it.
Yeah, exactly. Because it would happen so fast, you wouldn't register. But if it was happening over half a second, you would probably pick up on the change as it happened.
Yeah, and look how difficult that is to find.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you had to, like, literally had to go, there's 24 frames. Okay, fine. Then let's go to the next and let's go to the next. I mean, it takes hours to go through this stuff.
yeah, it does. They were very clever the way they did it. It was very persuasive, and it's taken 50 years to find the way they did it, which is what is confirmed basically in Make Believe, Smoke and Mirrors. Hence the title of that film, Make Believe, and you use smoke and mirrors to falsify it.
You have to look at it too, that even back then, this guy that was working, we don't know who he is, but what we do know is that whoever put that together used the equipment at Black Magic Studios that was around at that time. That
Yeah.
much we do know, but where or who he is, nobody knows.
To be honest, it doesn't really matter who he is.
No.
The result of what he's identified is what's important, and his explanations for it, they're fairly technical, but that's good. That's the way it should be.
I just accidentally came across Archangel. That's his website.
And
He's got them building the molds here. He's got them digging the craters after they blasted them. At the very bottom, it has all the different pages down there to click on. But it has the old computers, the size of them. There are a few shots just on that first page there of them doing the plaster molds. On the front page there, it shows where they actually at Flagstaff, but it shows them blowing the craters in the ground. Apparently, they were even timed so that the material coming out of one crater will overlay into another. That's a whole lot of detail to create that kind of thing.
there were two fields that they blew open. One was where they placed the crane over, and the other one was where they used to practice in.
Okay, if you go to Apollo Reality, there's the gantry crane, and there's the one they blew the holes in right on there for them to practice with. And that's the size of that gantry crane there. It's even got a fairly simple lem that they're lowering up and down on there on the cables. And there's all the different shots of it right there, just on Apollo Reality. And there they are after they filmed it, and then they're playing it back for the simulator.
I like how the guy says, it looks like plaster of Paris.
The moon is essentially gray. No color. Looks like plaster of Paris.
That's the image they get after they filmed the ball, filming it, and now here's two guys looking at on the simulator. But like I said, all of these old things. There's the photographs, and he's taking that and he's drawing it out to a larger size. Look at that image that they've taken off of there. That's what they're landing on. Here's the gantry crane right here, eh? Like, that's monster. This old website with these pictures, I mean, they tell you an awful lot. And look at this shot. I don't even know what that is, because that is still supposed to be the moon. All of these are them out showing where they were on their geological stuff, all the equipment they had. Look at this simulated LEM here, the very first one. They got the triangular windows. They just had the round door. That was one of their first versions, kind of looked like that. Look at the pictures that they've already taken of that for simulations. That shows how they were relaying the messages around on the ground. See, that says Mount Eldon. I think it's on the north side of Flagstaff. And this is the relays that they used for all of the communications. So they even practice the simulation of the communications. And there's how they practice doing the footprint right there. See that? Exactly the same, even the shadow angle in the dirt. Simulated that. They simulated everything. This is being updated a fair bit because look at here. The Orion trial by fire is here.
Yeah, that's quite recent. That guy no longer works for NASA, does he? He works for some company in Texas.
Well, they promoted him right out of the company. This is a very old website,
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
even the design on it, but this is Archangel.
Xavier Pascal.
This guy goes by the name of Michael, and I thought they were the same website, but this guy's still going.
Xavier's English wasn't as good as we're seeing here.
Well, this is a UK website,
Oh, it is, yeah, yeah.
and the guy's name is Michael. But I thought that it hasn't been updated in a hell of a long time.
Well, Trial by Fire was, what year was that came out?
Orion Trial by Fire. That was 11 years ago.
They just uploaded some of the original footage here again. That's just going around the plaster mold, that's all. That's shot on that track going around. They turn the camera so it's upside down.
Yeah, Langley Moon Studio.
A lot of stuff on that website. But yeah, it's an interesting channel that he's got there. I didn't think it was still active. But there's a lot of footage and there's a lot of images in there that have long gone.
Yeah, long gone, just like those two that were shot outside. Where are they?
Yeah, there was ones piled up on outside. That was Downey Studios. And then they had the capsule sitting outside as well. Now, if you look anything up, NASA never owned Downey Studios, but it opened by NASA in 1962.
Oh, you mean Downey was not owned by NASA, but then they weren't. And
Yeah.
then they tore it down and turned it into a furniture factory.
God.
We don't know what they've turned it into. You see, and then I read the entire article on it saying that they were building a zero gravity simulator in there for $3.5 billion at Downey Studios.
Well, it's not
Right.
what they say now.
No, now it's nothing. I wonder where they are building it. They're probably building it on Mars.
Oh, yes, Mars. Right, yeah. Well, no, they couldn't do that because the reporters have to get there first. They always do. And they haven't got there yet.
Doesn't the CBC have to get there? Canadian Broadcasting Corporation usually makes it there first.
Somebody's got to get there.
Well, I'm surprised Pravda hasn't made it there yet.
Maybe they haven't told us they've got there. Well, the Chinese state broadcasting, they probably got there.
Well, we'll see what Felix and Paul Studios is up to in the next 6 months or so.
If Donald Trump starts funding them, then you know what they're up to.
I think they'll be cut off. They need to have those jobs in the US.
Well, just like Artemis, where is it? They said that next year, in 2026, supposedly, they're sending Artemis 2 around the moon.
But they cut $8 billion out of the budget, so it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. And without that space station, Artemis 3 isn't going to leave the ground.
That's right. They can't even do that without all the support now because that vehicle needs all of that extra fuel just to do the translunar injection.
You know, what about all the water that they would have to carry there? Once again, you have this problem with radiation, and now NASA even put that little image out there showing how they're going to solve it. But the problem is that they're going to need 10 rockets full of water being shipped up one at a time and then transfer that over to another vehicle in low Earth orbit before they're going anywhere. How are they going to land that on the moon even though it's a sixth of the gravitate? I mean, are you serious?
That's the same bloody rocket that keeps blowing up, the one over the Indian Ocean, for Christ's sakes. Couldn't even take a little bit of low speed re-entry and it flies apart.
Boy, I tell you,
Yep.
those people better consider themselves fortunate that they're not on there.
Well, you see, the one thing that Musk needs to stop doing, he needs to stop putting that little button in there, the rapid, unexpected disassembly button. If he took that out, if he put the easy button in from Staples, everything would work better. But he keeps putting like a nice red button as the rapid disassembly button.
I think people are starting to notice it. It takes a while, but people come to it when they're ready. And the more they read about Musk landing on Mars, maybe they've seen a few of the things that we've posted about humans not being able to survive unless surrounded by 6 feet of water.
Yeah.
6 feet of water, how much is that going to weigh?
Yeah, and that has to go all the way around the outside of the shell. And
Yeah,
then they have to build a container around that. You gotta be kidding. It's
that's
never
100.
gonna happen.
The problem is if you're taking that, how are you going to use that water? Like you can't water your plants to it, it's irradiated. You can't drink it, it's irradiated,
I
right?
hadn't thought of that.
And then at a certain point in time, it's going to absorb so much radiation, it's going to be the problem because it's radioactive material.
Yeah, what was I just seeing the other day? There was one of the people who were working on the X-15 project and the B-52 bomber that launched it. And they said it was so radioactive when it got back to Earth, it was dangerous to go anywhere near it. And the X-15 had only gone to the Kármán line, what, 50, 60 miles up. Apparently they were supposed to wash the whole craft down to get rid of the radioactivity. I don't know what they washed it with.
Most of the time, it didn't go past 100,000 feet. And Neil Armstrong, on the official documents, it's only at 200,000 feet when he lost control of the thing.
I'm looking at this diagram. Water shield tanks, 0.3 meters deep, truncated octahedral geometry, 7 meters outside diameter, 6.4 meters inside diameter. So you know what that means. That means it's going to have to be 10 meter structural vessel. That's the pressure vessel is going to have to be 10 meters here, according to this diagram. But that's still 1.5 meters deep is
Yeah.
what that water is going to have to be. That's circling it.
And water weighs quite a lot, doesn't it? You know the famous phrase, a pint of pure water weighs a pound and a quarter. It's 20 ounces.
But then what they're showing here, they're showing the water itself that's circling inside of the actual shield tank. That's 0.3 meters deep. So actually the water has to be a foot deep.
I mean, that would weigh quite a bit.
Well, if
Deep.
you're looking at water, it is 10 pounds per US gallon.
Well, then again, I mean, if you have a 7 meter outside diameter and the actual water that's sitting inside of it is 0.3 meters deep, but
Yeah,
that's circling the whole 7 meter tank.
it's huge. No, it's the side of one of those petrol tankers. You know, the things that deliver gas to your petrol station. I mean, those things take about 5,000 gallons. They're the size of a bloody spaceship.
So then what they're saying here, then if you were to build an octagon inside of that, and then you would have to build a layer where that water would be circling, then you'd have to build a shell underneath it to hold it in. Man, that's going to be heavy.
Yeah, about 40 tons. It's just not feasible.
You're talking, 40, 50 tons of water at least.
So how many starships is that going to take to get into low Earth orbit to fill this thing?
Oh, God almighty.
Musk claims 200 tons, but he can't even get the thing to orbit without a payload right at the moment. The other rockets going up there, I think about 20 tons is their limit.
And he can't even land it back on Earth either, can he? Without blowing up.
Well, the Indian Ocean is.
It's full of dead rockets, rather like the Atlantic.
So what part of it blew? Was it the actual starship or was it the
Oh,
rocket?
the whole thing flew apart.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
It lost all of its automated systems. They couldn't connect to it. It lost everything. It barely made the Kármán line.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look at it's raining back to Earth just like the last one. When will Musk ever learn that you cannot put that many engines onto a rocket and not expect it to explode?
Why doesn't he take a lesson from the Russians when they tried doing it with the N1 and it blew up 4 times? When is Musk ever going to learn? Learn.